Hey everybody, I told you we're going to go live and we were going to be talking about quite a few things today. So, as I know it or understand it, thing is we have heard that all officers have been charged, and so that's a good thing as of right now. I know that was a lot of the protests going on. We're going to be talking about the many ways to stand up against racism and different things like that. I wanted to start off before I get to your questions. I wanted to start off by giving you a little background about how important Grassroots was to my freedom and support. And the reason why I think that's important is because I want to put into context kind of what I would consider the trifecta of what took place. After I, lost trial, and of course nobody knew about who I was, I need you to understand that at that point, I had a whole lot of faith and no options. God was my only option. And at that point, I wrote a letter. I sent that letter to anybody you can think of that is in civil rights or human rights. I had my family send that letter out. Once I sent that letter out, there was one individual who was a grassroots organizer. I believe she was stationed in North Carolina at that time. And I got it into the hands of her. I got her name out of some magazine that I read that she had organized in that magazine, The Freedom of Another Two Women. And so I got it in the hands of her. My family did. Okay. This lady was able to get involved, get it into social media, and get some speed and some traction, grassroots level. That's the reason why you're seeing a lot of things, because they've always been there, but they don't always get the credit. So I'm here today to kind of just share with you what that looks like and how important grassroots are. And if you're considering doing work or donating or whatnot, consider them, because if it was not for the grassroots movement that then expounded, like really made the dust after I advocated for myself by writing that letter, I would not be here. So here we go. Of course, it was God inspired. I always say God assembled me an army, but that trifecta looked like me advocating for myself along with my family to support me. After that, the grassroots movement got involved. Once she got involved, it was like she lit a fire with all the other grassroots people across the nation. At that point, CNN got involved, which is the other trifecta, which is media. So once media got involved, CNN was the first one to break the story in terms of a major news network. And from that point, all other news networks got involved. And then you also had radio. You all know, you probably heard it on the radio. So at that point, you have radio, you have TV media, and then you also have social media. So those things were taking place. And then the other piece of that trifecta that I mentioned, that I want to also mention, is then you talk about attorneys, lawmakers, and policymakers. And so my attorneys came from a lawmaker. That lawmaker was Miss Corrine, former Congresswoman Corrine Brown. Once she got involved as well with other people, then I was able to be fortunate enough to get a team of attorneys. Those team of attorneys were then able to work with their respective law firms, which were 3 different ones. And so as time went on, then you had women who got involved who had no idea who I was, but saw it on the news. These women, including local grassroots people and organizers locally and in the state of Florida. I can remember rallies being held and done by Angie Nixon. I remember the Dream Defenders coming to court and also being kicked out of court for singing and protesting. And then you had local lady Alisa, and Samaya, along with other women in Chicago, Seattle, LA, New York, all over. And so at that particular point, it was grassroots women, grassroots led, who kept my name and my story in the news. And if they couldn't keep it in the news, they kept something going on. Because what happens is, before we go into my questions, what happens is with women, specifically Black women, you don't hear much more about their cases, i.e. Breonna Taylor, i.e. Atiana Jefferson. And so while we are very happy to be marching and see, progress be made on other cases where we see police brutality or any injustice and racism, we want that same energy with the women. And so what the grassroots movement did for me, and I mean all over, formerly incarcerated women, I mean, it was just unbelievable, was continue to pour and support. They connected a major amount of dots, and what resulted was Survived and Punished, which also continues the work. Please look them up because they do great work. Also, former Chicago Alliance for Free Marissa Now. They are now Love and Protect out of Chicago. So Seattle had an alliance for Marissa as well. Like, it was all over. It was absolutely all over. And these women continue the work. And this is why these grassroots are so important, because they have their ear to the ground and they know what's really going on. So I want you all to consider looking these people up in addition to what you've seen, and also just make sure that you understand that there's people in your actual local community who are doing the things that you desire, but they may not get up a lot of attention. But that's okay, because we can give them the attention, because we've been able to see what that does. Once they start, kicking up the dust, things start happening. So I just wanted to make sure I point that out there, because it was a trifecta. You have to advocate for yourself, is what I did, because nobody goes to jail and say, let me pick that person out of the million people in jail and advocate for her. I absolutely had to, God inspired, do that. And then God directed people into position to be able to support me. And it wasn't about me. Anybody who worked on my case knew that I always felt it wasn't about me. It was about the movement. It was about the cause, because as I sat there, there were many other women that I knew was experiencing injustice in addition to the injustice that I suffered. So I just want to make sure we start with that. So, I'm going to keep going on. I'm actually going to go straight to the questions. And thank you all for sending questions. I appreciate that, because I needed it. And I appreciate you engaging with me. I do. So my first question came from Natavia. I don't know your last name, Natavia, but thank you. And it says, are we mad enough to boycott everything that has no regard for the Black Lives Matter movement? The companies who support the re-election of current occupant of the White House. And that's a good question. I want y'all to chime in. Tell me, do you think that we're mad enough? I don't know. Are we mad enough? I will tell you how I feel about that. I think it takes steps. And I'm going to speak only for myself. Not until these things occurred to me and I got to understand and different things like that, I really understood what was holding back in terms of equality. But I think you need to we really got to be clear about this. When we talk about systemic racism and institutional racism, you're talking about from your housing, your banking, to your laws, to your public education, to your health care. It's very much affected in that way. So when people start talking about that level of equality and racism and injustice, it is from the court system to everything, voting, everything. So that is what the bigger, piece of that pie is. And so how mad are we? Well, I'll ask you this, because as of yesterday, the Department of Justice just reallocated 52, I think, million or trillion, not sure, to actually pay for more funding and add more recruits to police officers and law enforcement. It may be necessary for other places. I'm not quite sure. But I guess my point in mentioning that is, with everything that we have going on at this moment, and if there are stations who are currently needing support in more officers, not only are they going to take our tax dollars, they're going to tell you can't protest, they're going to continue to kill you, and they're going to use your money to do it. And so this is where policy making and really getting into staying mad, as we are mad, and voicing your opinion about these things. Also, not only just supporting businesses, which I hear a lot of people talk about supporting black owned businesses. I absolutely try to support black owned businesses, and I think we all are getting much better at that. But the question is, how mad? Because if we don't stay mad, then at some point it'll covert and it'll transfer into something else. So y'all tell me what you think about that. Y'all just found out how to get the the comments. I've been sitting here and looking for the comments. Y'all like know where I was. Thank y'all. Tonya Quarterman says to keep applying pressure for sure. And I think that's in the sentiment of stay on the gas. Don't let up off the gas. Stay on the gas. Keep the pressure. Keep the protest. Because now many people are looking for the justice for, Mr. I forget his name right now. Y'all gonna kill me. But we definitely want to. I was getting ready to mix him and Brianna together, but you know who I'm speaking of. But I think it's important for us to continue to stay mad and apply the pressure in every way that you can. Let's see here. Samaya asked, which is one of the members with Alita and Alicia Baeria. So Samaya Coma, Elisa, and Alita Torre actually mentioned they were a part of Free Marissa Now as well as myself. So while I was in jail or incarcerated, they took their what they did with me. They spoke with my family. They actually spoke with me. Them then worked with the attorneys, and it was a really good collaborative effort. So that's why I'm talking about the trifecta. While we might not agree with everything META does or this movement does, it all works itself out for the good. It always does. But Samaya's question is, how are black people educating and organizing black families and communities about safety, physical security, and food security? How can this movement be more intergenerational, or should this movement be for a certain age group, millennials on down? I'd love to hear what you guys got to say about that. How are we doing about educating and organizing black families and communities about safety? Because we've seen a lot of the things that's been going on in terms of not only increased antagonistic behavior from some law enforcement, and I'm very careful to say some are not doing that. The ones that are, I think that's what we want to stay the focus on. And then about safety and physical security, because a lot of people are being harmed as a retaliation effort for people who are protesting. So what are we doing about that? I had somebody else. Mona Lisa said she marched around the courthouse for me. Thank you. Thank you. George Floyd, thank you. I was getting ready to mention George and Taylor. And I'm going to let that sit out there. And again, the question is, how can this movement be more intergenerational, or should this movement be for certain age groups and millennials on down? Honestly, I don't think we can. We're not going to. Here's the thing. I think what is so important is that we take the wisdom and the experience from the older generation, and we somehow figure out a cohesive way to be able to bring that in with the energy and the ingenuity and the technological advancement that millennials have. And I believe those two working together will be so much more beneficial in the long run than if we make it about age groups. Of course, we have different experience, obviously, because my mom is in her 60s, almost 70. And then my grandmother is like 82, I think now. And I listen to her and I could tell from her experience that things and the way she sees things is different. But I'm also able to sit down and have a conversation with her and say, Grandmoo, that's what I call her. Hey, this is what they're doing with people who are mentally ill. And this is what, and she was like, oh, okay. Because if she doesn't know and I don't educate her, then that's going to continue to be her thought. But she's also been able to educate me on things that has happened and changed in the community because she's been in that same community her whole life and what that looks like as well. So I'm hoping that you all will chime in with that. Takesha Prince Kemp says we got to stop stepping with the black foot and step with our Christ foot. Okay. All right. Thank you for your input. And the other one, we're going to go to my third question. Hopefully we'll have more. If y'all got questions, make sure y'all put them in here, because we're going to talk about it. Hey, Tam LeBuck. So Tangi Sands asks, if we advocate for and defend human rights, do you think it would help to combat racism? Y'all, my hair got something going on. Just roll with it, all right? That's what naturals do. The question is, if we advocate for and defend human rights, do you think it would help to combat racism? Yeah, so my opinion is human rights is only an issue for people who aren't black, because for whatever reason we're seen as subservient or inferior. So some people don't see us equal in terms of human, and I'm not quite sure if we're going to directly impact human. It would be nice if people from a humanities standpoint could just see everybody as human, but we have a lot of implicit, deep entrenched racism and biasness that prevents people from even understanding that what they do and how they treat people and how they think and what's ingrained in them and their privilege or the lack thereof separates us from human rights. We even think about how people feel about animals and how they move on their behalf, and they're not humans. But we can see people really pull together and advocate in ways I've never seen about animals. And so we're clearly not animals, right? So then I'm not quite sure where we're going to move in that. Tell me what y'all think. Helena says, I believe in an individual basis, some are. However, I would like for more prominent members of the Jacksonville community to create ongoing workshops to address being black and growing in our blackness as a uniting force for independence. I hope that it would include financial literacy, personal care, and black African history in and beyond the Americas. Thank you very much, Lena. I think that's also very important. I know we've in the past, I've spoke about to people I've had dialogue about. So if we are only going on our public school education and we haven't gone beyond that imagine what our white folks or somebody else with the education that they got think about us. Unfortunately, some of us, meaning people of color, specifically blacks, have only had the same amount of education on African American history as white people. And so when I see that there's a disconnect, that's because we haven't been, the black, it's a joke. And so obviously it was designed to be. And so that has an opportunity to absolutely be more robust and more accurate, in addition to financial literacy, because we could dump a whole bunch of resources in our community, but if people aren't responsible and understand how to make that stretch, are committed ethically to making sure that they do so, what's the best way to grow the money in addition to acquiring equity as much as equality, then we're going to be like pretty much back in the same boat, which is why it's important that those things are done at the same time. And here's the thing. We could walk and chew gum at the same time. You know what I mean? We can have these things taking place at the same time. Honestly, I know a lot of people don't feel, there's mixed feelings about the church, but if that's an area where people frequent and gather, we can talk about those things, because all of those things are in, from a biblical standpoint, depending on where you worship and who you consider your God, is principle in this stuff somewhere. So it's something that can also be taught in, churches. And I'm not sure if you have a church or you attend a church that actually does that, by all means, let me know. Hey, Melanie Patrick. Hey, so Tam says, look what happened to Mike Vick. Yeah. That was, that's a prime example of where we are not very equal in terms of focusing on human. I don't know. And let me take it just another step further. If Michael Vick obviously was able to do that and receive that level of, you know, outcry and passion from organizations and people, y'all sure didn't do Mr. Lion King like that, because he was carrying on with those animals in Oklahoma. We did instead he got a documentary. I mean, he's sitting in prison right now, but I'm just saying it caught up with him eventually. But I don't even think people was really as outraged as Carol Baskin was. Bless her heart. I'm just gonna blame Carol Baskin for everything. Okay, so let's see. Tanya Quarterman says, I'm very interested in the different movements. Didn't know about any of those back when I got charged. And she says for survivors. Absolutely. I will say this to you all. In terms of, I mean, we're walking around with like computers in our hand, like seriously. So we have the opportunity to look into different organizations, and they are often a lot underfunded because they don't have the support from other, government agencies. But I can tell you they are very dedicated. Not that the other ones aren't. I'm just talking specifically about the ones that are underfunded and are grassrooted and are looking for community support, not necessarily looking for the government to get involved and get in their business, and I hate to say it like that, but the fact of the matter is, once you start getting the help from them in that way, it's a lot of paperwork. It's a whole lot of effort to just report and keep track of steps, and the work sometimes gets missing. So with these organizations, oftentimes they go strictly and stick to the work. Somebody is minding the financial business and things like that, but they are very focused on the work. And what that allows them to do is to be more impactful. And it's not about quality. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. So those movements are out there for survivors. And she mentioned that when she got charged, she didn't know about that. And I could tell you it was a lot of women all over the place. We're seeing them even as young as, remember Brescia Meadows, that was charged. You saw Santoya just get out. She was a young girl. These things happen. And so you actually have people who are looking for support. And I'm going to tell you something. I hope you support something. And I hope you figure out what's important to you. There's a whole lot of things to care about, a whole lot of things. And I'm just saying, it's not that I don't care about other things. It's just that I have a level of care, and I'm praying that they get the support that they are getting. But there's also things that I choose to be supportive of, and then how I support. So sometimes I make phone calls. Sometimes I donate cash. I did go to the actual march. Me and my oldest girl, we went to the march in Jacksonville done by JPAC down at the downtown on this past Saturday. I've also done a march in D.C. with the Black Women's Blueprint, and it's another group that was just phenomenal. I have spoke at different things as it relates to needing to be able to do that. I've written clemency letters. I have worked in certain capacities with survivors who are not able to get support from our justice system, and I help them obtain that so that they're safe, their family and their kids. And these are just things that I choose to do. I also try to support other groups and candidates that I'm looking forward to that align with my policies. And even like I said, if I don't necessarily care about an individual per se, in an indifference, doesn't matter. If they're doing the work and it's helpful to the community, I definitely try to support that. So that's just something that you might want to consider. Darlene Neal says, we need to keep our foot on the gas. Absolutely. But we need to encourage all young people to make 2020 your step up and vote. Get everyone that can vote must vote this year. It's time for your voice to be heard. Get around the older people that has a voice, and get political ready to step up and make a difference before racism and brutality try to take over our state or your state. We have so many young, smart adults ready to take a stand. No peace, no justice. Thank you, Darlene Neal. I appreciate that. So let's see here. Hey, Danielle, thank you. And Andre, this is a collective movement. We as a human race can't look away from these issues anymore, praying and uplifting. And let me tell you something else, like I want to say real quick. One of the things that's important that we have now in our age that we, like the older people the past generations didn't have, is the ability to go to things that are not censored and get the information that we would like to get, which is also very important by our media and content that is owned by African Americans that can support, for the most part, the things that we need to see and maybe are not seeing with the narratives that we want to drive is also very important. Me and my sister did a video last year about a case that was in the Supreme Court as it relates to media. I don't know if he said anything. I need to look and find out. But absolutely, because that also is very important, and that collective effort is very important. Tam is saying, please participate in your local elections. They are huge. Absolutely. Here's another thing. I know a lot of people have some indifference towards voting, and listen, I totally get it. I also understand that voting is a part of our civic duty and just how things are set up. We didn't create it, but we got to kind of function within it. It is what it is. At least that's the way I see it. So consider really paying attention to your local votes, because honestly, your local elections, because those have they touch you the most. So really consider voting from the bottom up and really paying attention to those people who are quiet right now. So anybody who's sitting in a public city council, state representative, Senate seat, House seat, whatever they got going on, your sheriffs, your mayors, watch what they're saying, because what they're saying or what they're trying to do is indicative of what they believe in policy, as well as how they feel about other communities. So make sure that you're listening to what they're saying, and if they're silent, also understand that silence is also very complicit and also an act of violence as far as I'm concerned, especially with what we have going on. So make sure you are paying attention to that. We are past voting on name recognition and popularity, like for real. We out here dying in these streets. We do not have time for that. So really be educated and informed. We got too much things around us that can help us. Let's see. I'm trying to make sure I include just about everybody. You know how we talk, y'all. And if you have any other questions, hopefully we'll be able to do something like this again. Like I said, I'm going to kind of, get ready to close out. It's important for me to help you understand how important the grassroots is. I wanted to kind of share that with you. I haven't had the opportunity to be able to do that. And just remember that trifecta: support, advocate for yourself, and if you're fortunate to have really good family and people who love you, make sure you stay in touch with them and don't burn those bridges as much as possible. The other thing was making sure I got it into the hands of a Black woman grassroots organizer. I'm not saying that men did not. Let me be very clear. I know you was out there, fellas. I know a lot of y'all said to me, I almost had to tell somebody because you personally knew me, and I appreciate that, right? So can keep that energy about all of us, because here's the thing: we can't afford to let off the gas, because the minute we do, we have our kids sitting in the back of the bus that we're going to be dragging along into this future and into this world and into this society. And we can't afford to give up the gas and pull up now, because we got to consider our children and our children's children and our community. So that's very important. But that last thing, so making sure you advocate for yourself, good supportive family. Secondly, grassroots, heavy grassroots presence. Black women grassroots organized, honestly, are just absolutely phenomenal. I just cannot stress that enough. You fellas that support, we appreciate you. My experience has been totally very much involved with women who have just been absolutely, I'm going in all the way hard. A lot of women. Also, media, news media. Let me just tell you about the Black correspondents that were going in for me. Joanne Reed, Melissa Harris Perry. If you know of other ones, that's what I'm talking about. When our voices are on TV and they're saying no in those newsrooms, bring these stories up. No, you're not going to say this to Angela Rise. Hey, no, I'm going to say this to you. We need that. Social media, radio. I remember Tom Joyner, all kinds of people, y'all. And then go into, again, that other piece of it. Attorneys, lawmakers, and policymakers, very much needed. It works itself out together. We can't exclude one, so it's a part of the body. We can't function as a body if we cut off the arm. You know how it goes. So that's how it worked out for me. John Cooper, thanks for speaking on this topic. Sorry I'm late to the party. It's cool. You'll see me next week. Ricky Smiley, my sister said he was. Ricky Smiley, I remember him. Takesha says, I legit spent last election at the polls with a sign that said, repent for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Hallelujah. All right, y'all. I think that's all I got. Y'all be blessed. Listen, I know it's a lot going on. Keep the pressure on in all the ways that you can. Take a minute, pull back from that, breathe. Okay? And then go back, but don't stay away too long because you don't want to be desensitized to it. You want to make sure we have a healthy appetite of it, but make sure you take care of yourself. Because I actually haven't been sleeping, to be honest with you, so I've had to kind of really, reset that. But thank y'all for joining me. Peace out.